Hello, everybody. I am Sherry Riker-Belul, author of Say It Now, and so excited to have the delightful Irene O'Garden. And Irene is author of many books, including Maybe My Baby, which we just discovered I had when my son was a baby. And so we have this beautiful connection. But today we're talking about Glad to Be Human. Hi, Irene.
Hi there. Glad to be human. Whoops.
And it's Adventures in Optimism. Is that the tag?
That is the tag. That is the tag. And, you know, I think we're all challenged to have adventures in optimism right now. So I'm very happy to be here and talking about it with you.
Rita, I know. You know, anytime I've put this out on social media over the last couple of days, I've said, which is very true, because I had the honor of meeting you before on an author panel. But I've said to people, like, if you need an uplift, you know, if you're feeling sad and you want to feel a little glad, this is the place to be, right?
Oh, thank you.
I know who you are, and that's what you bring.
Oh, well, thank you. I know we're all facing a whole lot of stuff right now, but it is my belief that gladness and optimism are kind of baked in, not only to the human being, but to the universe. And that's what propels creativity in the world. So it's always accessible to us. I like to compare it to balance. You know, balance is something that we kind of take for granted, and we mostly have it, and occasionally we lose it, but we always get it back again. And that's kind of what gladness is like for me.
I love that. Can you just tell us a little bit about, I mean, obviously this book is the perfect time for right now, but you wrote it before this kind of period that we're in. What inspired you at the time to write the book?
Well, it's interesting. Some years ago, Sherry, I looked around and saw kind of a lot of bad press for the human race. Nobody knows about that, right? There's just so much bad press about the human race. And I thought, you know, the headlines that we see and the images that we receive are about the exception behaviors in the human race. And it's really easy to get distracted by those and to build a world based on those images. And I don't believe that they serve us in a daily way. So I began to simply reflect on, well, what makes me glad to be human? These things make me feel bad to be human. But if I feel bad to be human, then I can't do anything because it just makes me want to isolate myself. It just makes me want to pull away from the human race. This is not good for me. This is not good for the human race. So, because we are meant to be together. So I thought, well, let me think about what makes me glad to be human. And as I asked myself that question, the words kept pouring out and the images, and there were so many things that I was grateful for. So I wrote an essay about it called Glad to Be Human, and it won a Pushcart Prize, which is a lovely literary prize that I'm very honored to have received. And my take on the world has always been this way, so it's not like a totally new discovery for me, but I had other pieces of writing, and I kept writing. I kept looking for the things in our daily lives that make us glad to be sensual creatures, glad to be emotional creatures, glad to be connecting creatures. So little things would come up during the day. I would write that down. We would take, we've traveled a good deal, and we would take trips to rather remarkable places. And I would be kind of bombarded with words and images that I wanted to capture. And it's not that everything in our lives is going to be this blast of sunshine. You know, there are also essays about 9/11. There are also essays that make it sound like it's really long. It's not really long. Mostly concise things. But even those things, within those things, we can search for what is healing in it, what is helpful in it, how can we contribute. So these, you know, various length of essays. Some of them are just a few paragraphs long. Some of them are one-liners. Some of them are a few pages. There's a trip to Paris in there. That's a nice extended thing if you feel like going to Paris.
And who doesn't?
And they just all came together to make this book. And I'm so happy that it is in the world now. I felt like it was important before, but now I feel like it may be more important than ever.
And I so agree with you. I really feel, I mean, I particularly like this aspect that, you're not just Pollyanna. It's not just this cotton candy, but that you really, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think
No.
It's like that where you're coming from is you see the world, you know the world, but you're choosing to look for the beauty. You're choosing, right? That's my take on it.
Absolutely. I think that being optimistic or looking for the gladness and looking for the gratitude is the most practical approach to life. And I've been at this a little while.
I like that. Yeah.
But it's practical. It's like if everything, it's not to say we don't feel sorrow, we don't feel anger, we don't feel grief. Well, of course we feel those, and that's part of what makes us human. It also can make us act, which is a very beautiful capacity that we have as human beings. But to derive what is the most usable, the most helpful, the most compassionate response from these things that we experience in life is very practical, because otherwise, well, let's just toss off half of our experience. That's like, no.
Irene, I love this. And again, such perfect timing, right? So let's just delve a tiny bit more into that, because I love when you said practical, right? This isn't just like, all kinds of like feel good fluff. You're saying, listen, this is the most practical thing we could do right now. So let's just say there's someone listening to this right now or listening to the replay who's having trouble being glad to be human right now. Can you give us a practical first step?
Well, first of all, we all have felt that way. So it's good to remind ourselves we are not alone in feeling that way. And so first you just acknowledge that. And I think it's really good to acknowledge when we're feeling like, how can we even be part of this human race? Blah, 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 blah. So you experience that.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, my first response is to connect with the body. I think it's so helpful for us to simply take a moment, close our eyes. I know you've heard this from other people, but it's because it's wisdom. Just, close your eyes, take a deep breath, realize that your body is breathing in and out. Your body wants to be here. All of the systems are working pretty well in our bodies. So, okay, it wants to be here. There must be something positive about that. And we simply open ourselves up to that energy, because that energy is the energy that connects us with all of life. And what makes us feel bad is when we feel disconnected from one another, from ourselves, from our emotions. And that is something we can address by saying, okay, I'm experiencing being alive right now. So that would be my first suggestion.
I love it. And I'm going to pause us for a minute, because I want anybody who's listening live or again on the replay to do that, to take that breath. Let's just take a second and everyone just connect to what Irene is saying, which is such a beautiful wisdom, that our bodies want to be alive. And I love this. When I open my eyes, I hope I'm saying your name right. Is it Fonda Moore? Says, being real and being present allow us to connect in meaningful ways. Great.
Wow, nice. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was really struck when you said that it's like just coming back to that really basic place of we're here. Like what you're saying, our bodies they're going no matter how we feel.
And I think it's important to remember too, we are meant to heal. So when it, we get a paper cut, 95%, 99%, it's going to heal. It wants to heal. We're meant to heal. And that's true throughout the universe of living things. And for as far as the inanimate objects, I don't know that they're all that inanimate. But everything is moving towards health, moving towards being full of the energy of life. So we just take away those little obstacles, which are mostly self-created obstacles. What we believe, what we tell ourselves. I just behave as if that's what I'm going to be creating. Wherever I put my focus, that's where I'm going to do my creating. But the great thing is when we sort of broaden our bandwidth, when we really do connect with other energies in the world, you think about cells, for example. It's like, do you think cells could metabolize if they weren't glad to be cells? It's kind of like, or atoms. Adams was like, oh, I just really don't feel like creating any molecules tonight, honey. I'm not very good at it. I just, I don't feel like doing it. We laugh because we know that's not really the way the universe works. And so it's just connecting with that same energy that's always available to us.
I love that. Just yesterday, it's so funny. I was looking out at the tree and thinking the same thing. I was thinking, the trees aren't likely thinking, oh, really? I gotta bloom, And it's the same thing, right? Like, and I wrote down what you said because it was so beautiful. You said, moving toward health, moving toward the energy of life. And I feel like just those phrases, they help me calibrate, right, in a different way. So if I'm not feeling healthy, or maybe I'm not feeling energized, I can say, oh, I'm moving in that direction. Irene said, I remember.
I always like saying, well, you may not be optimistic, but you can look forward to the day you will be.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's really brilliant. Have you always been like this?
I didn't, none of us has the world's best childhood. So I had challenges as a child, as we all do. And, my way I comforted myself was to overeat and to pad my body. And yet, even as a child, I'll tell you this, there's a little story. Even as a child, something in me knew that it was eventually going to be okay, that I was going to be okay. I think most children feel that way. I think that's because, again, it's our native approach in life. It's our body. It's all of it. We're much more likely to be looking forward to things than not. Some years ago, I found myself on an escalator next to my husband in a tuxedo, and I was in this golden ball gown. And as we were about to go to a movie premiere, it was a fabulous event. And on that escalator, I went, I just thought, this is what that little girl was dreaming of, having some wonderful moment like that. So I sent it back to her. I like to pretend that it's all simultaneous. So I just sent it back to her. I said, you're right. It is going to be okay. Now, did she receive that? Well, I don't know. What made me optimistic? I think the world is far more leveled and curious than we are taught to believe it is, when all we pay attention to is the outward media. The inner self has so much to teach us. Dreams are such a great way to access that. Conversations like this, things that happen spontaneously, for me, are all part of that great richness.
Oh, Irene, I can't tell you, I'm so delighted to hear this, because I do that same thing. I do it. I send stuff to that little girl, and I send stuff to that older person that I hope will get to be here.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah.
Because we don't know. I like to think the same, like they say there's no time. So why can't we, why can't we send those little people moments of joy and hope in sadness? And why can't we? I ask advice from that other person who I hope is going to be 80 all the time. Hey, what?
Hey, wisdom.
And whether it's real or not, I don't care because it feels good.
Yes, I'm so with you on that, Sherry. The idea, I used to say, ooh, is this right? Is this really how the world works and all that? And I realized, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. What matters is what empowers us to be in this beautiful physical reality that we inhabit, and to continue looking for those things that make us glad to be here. I find it really interesting, Sherry. I don't know, I'm sure you were aware of this because, you're such a celebrator and you're such an appreciator. I love that for the last, 5 years or so, we have been seeing gratitude practices everywhere. The bookstores started filling up with gratitude journals about 5 years ago. You can hardly pick up a thing. Someone said, say 3 things before you go back, 3 things when you get up in the morning. Well, I think it's really interesting that so many of us have been practicing this, because that sharpens our eye. It sharpens our eye. It softens our heart. Sharpens our eye, softens our heart, and makes us even more present in this world, which is where we can create with one another.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. It's so funny. Again, I feel like I love this. I feel like we're so in sync. I didn't. Life kind of gave me last week idea after idea after idea about gratitude, like different ways. Like, and one of them, my favorite actually, because I jot them all down really fast because they were coming. One of my favorites was envy. Like, I realized when I'm envious of someone, what that really is life saying to me, hey, maybe you want to go in that direction. Like, maybe there's something over there that's calling to you. And it instantly, I've been practicing it, it instantly changes it from, hey, I wish I had that, to, oh, how can I maybe bring that into my life?
Yes.
And it's a place of gratitude. And for me, that's been like a really very useful place to practice gratitude.
What a beautiful realization. I have never heard that before. I think it's such a great way to use that emotion.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think what you're saying, it is true that we've all been, there's something about gratitude that has really opened up in the world. And maybe life was just so generous because it knew we were going to be a little hard hit. Right? Or a lot hard hit.
Yep.
And it prepared us. Maybe it prepared us that way by offering, hey, practice, get these muscles a little stronger. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. I think that is a great observation. And then, and it does come in handy, and it can always be strengthened. That muscle can always be worked, and with pleasure.
Hey, Irene, I'm going to just switch topics. I don't know why, but it dropped in, and I try to listen when things drop in because I think for some reason. You sent me this marvelous little video yesterday, and all of a sudden, just in the middle of our conversation about gratitude, maybe because I'm grateful for it, it dropped in like, hey, maybe Irene will talk about that because we don't have a whole lot of time, and I really want to make sure we do. Do you remember what you sent me?
Absolutely. It's called The Pledge of Attention. It's written in my book, Glad to be Human, page 61, I believe. It's very simple. I'll recite it. This is my pledge. I pledge attention to the flow of the United States of consciousness and to the reality from which it stems, one notion of our good, with liberty that just is for all.
I'm so glad that dropped in. This is what I love. Another thing to be grateful for life, right? That it tells us things because, first of all, those few, I don't know how many sentences that is, but they're jam-packed. You know? And I'd like to hear, wherever you want to start within that jam-packed, like there's so much wisdom in there. What's coming up for you right now about sharing about that?
Well, you know, we were sort of talking a little bit earlier about states of consciousness. Yeah. You know, the dream state, or that daydream state that we have, or that awareness sometimes that time it's possibly more flexible than we think it is. And one of the things I think we are experiencing as a culture is we're finding ourselves opening up to these types of consciousness that are not production oriented. They're not, you know, and anybody who does any kind of creative work knows it so often is a struggle, because you go like, oh, I should be out there in my poem factory making these poems every day, you know, or I should be writing in my journal and if I don't, where is that book I'm supposed to have, or I should be making an exhibit. I should be. And that kind of looking at time, and I did this myself for many years. Oh, I would create like a little book of hours for myself. Okay, this hour I had to do this. This hour I had to do this. And that is a very restricting, it's a helpful thing if you are in manufacturing. It's not so helpful for creating. And most of us are not in manufacturing. Most of us are dealing with information of all different kinds. The information that comes from inside of us is the most important, because that's what influences everything we see around us. So when we begin to develop a sensitivity to our changing states of consciousness, and they change, it's not like something we go like, okay, for 15 minutes, I am going to daydream, you know. We just relax, but we watch and we go like, why am I thinking of myself as a kid right now? Well, maybe I could use this creatively. Maybe I could send a little message back to her. Or, for heaven's sake, I'm sure each and every one of us has had the experience where you're really thinking about somebody and the phone rings, or you get an email or a text from them. Those are the kind of states of consciousness that I think are really interesting to explore. So we pledge our attention to them. We just say, I'm going to pay attention to what shifts in my mind, what shifts in my awareness, because it flows. And to believe, again, that it comes from a reality that is larger than the reality that we're in. So to the reality from which it stems. At the basis of that reality is the notion that we are good, that the whole universe is good. And I pledge my attention to that. I pledge my attention to looking for that good. And to the one notion of our good with liberty, which is the freedom that we have in our consciousness, in our bodies, with the way we can direct our thoughts, no matter how we think we are hemmed in by a job or a relationship or a life or all that, we have essential liberty. So we must continue to connect with that liberty. And how are we seeing? What are we receiving? And it is for all of us. So that helps remind us that each and every person has that same freedom. And we have to allow them that freedom. And sometimes they don't believe the same things we believe, or sometimes they drive us a little crazy. But we pay attention to and part of those changing states of consciousness are our emotions. So we don't stop them. We pay attention. We let them flow. We begin to, I like to think of consciousness as directing sounds too controlling, or control our consciousness. I like to think about it like we're conducting it. You know, it's a symphony of impulses that we have, and we are going to make the best possible sound of music from ourselves.
What? Irene, that was so beautiful.
Oh,
That was so
thank you.
beautiful. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. I mean, I loved it when you sent me that video and I heard the pledge, but I really, really loved hearing you break it down a little bit like that for us.
Thank you. Thanks. I've never done that before. That was a wonderful question.
You're going to have to listen to the replay of this because it's so beautiful. And here's my question for you about that.
Mm-hmm.
You know how you learned to be that conductor? Like that was really, that struck me. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to pledge to our attention. But Wozer, talk about like distractions and social media and the news and this and people and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Tell us.
Oh, it's all out there. But the more we just, it can be strengthened, the more we take the time going back to the body, paying attention to the breath. It doesn't have to be like meditation if that's not your thing. But coming back to ourselves and our own vitality and our own experience makes that huge difference. And I think we turn to distraction, and I definitely had all kinds of experiences in this. We turn to distraction, we turn to addiction, we turn to these things because we're afraid of ourselves, because we're afraid if we look into ourselves. And hey, guess what? We've been taught, oh, well, Darwin says we're just this, random scientific batch of evolution. So, or Freud says we have all these unsavory impulses within or church tells us, oh, you're bad, you were born bad, and you've got to work against your native bad. We have gotten a lot of input that might not be building our best interests. So we make a choice. Yeah. And we continue to make a choice that who and what I am is good. And how does that change how I behave? How do I respond? And if that is our foundation, and I could be wrong, we could be really tough, but that's not going to get us anywhere, because we look at a history where people have believed that about the human race for a really long time. I don't think it works. If it is true, it doesn't work. So I say, we are creatures of imagination. We are creatures of emotion. Let us please try some different things.
Hallelujah, sister. I'm pledging right now. And one thing you did that I really appreciated, I don't even know if it was conscious, but when you started answering my question about attention, you spoke with such just like softness and as if you had all the time in the world. And I loved that, because I think what that modeled is we do choose, right? Like I was talking about distraction and everything, the world's moving, and you were just like, you just came at it so calmly. And I think that was a beautiful modeling of what we can do every moment for ourselves. We do get to choose.
Yeah. We just have to remember that we have a choice. And we've been brought up in a culture that says you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice of who you are, what you are, where you would, we're boxed in by. But those are just ideas that are boxing us in, and beliefs. And we can totally change those. We can totally let those go if they're not serving us. And we get to make that decision.
Yee! Oh, Irene. Our time has literally, to me, it just feels like time, like no sense of time. It flew by. But just before we go, I just want to know, is there anything that you feel like you haven't had a chance to say that just feels like it wants to be said right now?
I would just like anybody who's watching this or listening this or reading my book to you can even write this down. I wrote it down. I'm very fond of the author Jane Roberts, who passed from this earth a while back, but I've been very influenced by her work. And in her work is a sentence that I wrote out, and I have it where I get dressed every day, and I look at it every day. And it is, I allow myself to fully feel the joy and vitality of my being, and I automatically create joyful realities.
Please say that one more time for us.
Sure. I allow myself to fully feel the joy and vitality of my being, and I automatically create joyful realities.
Irene, you are every bit as wonderful as I knew you were. You just proved it.
Well, thank you. You are a marvelous interviewer, and I love, or conversationalist, I should say, 'cause it's not quite an interview. And your spirit is just effervescent, and it's a pleasure to be around you.
This was such a joy, so perfect, and I thank you so much. I know you're going to have a beautiful day. Go out and just be your beautiful, vital self.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thank you, Irene.
Bye-bye.